In 2007, a live broadcast was interrupted by footage of a nuclear explosion. Messages calling out government lies suddenly appeared on Polish state TV in the 80s from a group of astronomers, and in 2002 Chinese cable broadcasts were hacked in multiple cities, showing footage that directly challenged the government. These are broadcast interruptions on live TV that terrified the public. In 2007, viewers of a Czech TV's Sunday morning show Panorama got a pretty disturbing surprise. The program usually just airs quiet, scenic shots from mountain resorts, basically tourism ads. But on June 17th, the feed from one of the cameras suddenly showed what looked like a small nuclear explosion going off in the countryside. It only lasted a few seconds and ended in static. This was subtle enough that some viewers didn't know if it was real or not, but the explosion was actually fake. It was CGI, planted by a local art collective. They'd physically tampered with the mountaintop camera to inject their pre-recorded video into the live broadcast. It's a creepy video. Really hits that analog horror kind of vibe before the analog horror genre was fully formed. Just this shot of a calm, scenic landscape with lazy elevator music playing in the background, and then this horrific explosion going off in the distance, totally offsetting everything. It all looks pretty convincing too. The group had pulled off other stunts before, but this one hit a nerve, especially with tourism businesses in the area who said it could scare visitors away. Czech TV considered legal action, but the group framed it as a kind of social experiment about media trust, forcing people to question what they were seeing on TV. In 1985, 4 Polish scientists pulled off something that looked more like a science fair project than a protest, but really rattled the government. These were astronomers, not hackers, and they used a ZX Spectrum home computer, some homemade circuits, and a transmitter to beam anti-regime messages right onto state-run TV in the city of Torun. Overlaid on the screen was text saying, "Solidarity, Torun. Boycotting the election is our duty. And solidarity, Torun. Enough price hikes, lies, and repression." All of it was signed with the logo of banned labor movement. Viewers at home were probably stunned to see the state's broadcast suddenly taken over by what looked like on-screen subtitles calling out the system. It didn't last long, but it did make a point. The 4 scientists were eventually caught and charged with owning an illegal transmitter and publishing what was labeled dangerous material. They received 4 months in jail and a fine. Put yourself in the shoes of some dude tuning into the Playboy channel in 1987. You have a mullet, you just finished cruising the highway with your top down blasting Motley Crue on the radio, and the best way to top off the day is to tune in to the channel with maybe a brew or two. That was the 80s, right? Well, on this day, you're in the middle of your spicy movie when all of a sudden the screen gets overtaken by this black background with a simple white message quoting Bible verses, telling people to honor the Sabbath and repent. That kind of kills the vibe. Well, the FCC eventually zeroed in on a guy named Thomas Haney, who worked as an uplink engineer for the Christian Broadcasting Network. Even though the message didn't say where it came from, investigators noticed certain video fingerprints, subtle traces in the signal that hinted at the type of equipment used, and from that they connected it to CBN. The station denied being involved, of course. Haney swore he was innocent, and CBN said their gear couldn't have even pulled it off. They tried to recreate the hijack using the same setup and failed, but the government argued otherwise, saying that it was possible and that Haney had the access and technical know-how. Eventually, a jury convicted him on 2 counts, though he was cleared of interfering with another adult channel due to poor video evidence. He didn't serve time, but he did get probation, a fine, and community service. Gotta say, I'm no expert on things like this, but I don't think things would play out the same way today. I don't know. I don't think the dude would have gotten in nearly as much trouble today. Society's just, I don't know, we're a lot more prudish these days. They took their Playboy very seriously back in the 80s, it seems. In early 2002, cable TV viewers in several Chinese cities were suddenly interrupted by unexpected programming. It was a planned hijack by members of Falun Gong, a spiritual group that had been heavily suppressed by the Chinese government. The hijackers wanted to challenge the official version of a disturbing public event from the year before. They showed videos disputing state propaganda and calling for an end to persecution. Depending on the city, the hijack lasted anywhere from a few minutes to nearly an hour, and some reports even longer. These weren't digital hacks, they physically tapped into broadcasting equipment, which took some serious planning. A few months later, 15 people were arrested, and they were given very harsh prison sentences. In the years that followed, reports came out that several of those arrested had died while in custody. But those claims have been hard to verify because of how tightly China controls information. During the 2006 Lebanon War, Israel managed to break into Hezbollah's Al-Manar TV and broadcast their own message, a very direct threat aimed at Hezbollah's leader, Hassan Nasrallah. His face appeared on screen with crosshairs over it, followed by the sound of 3 loud pops and footage of Israeli airstrikes. It only lasted a few seconds, but the point was quite obviously not subtle. Fast forward to 2014 during the Gaza conflict, and this time the other side hijacked Israel's Channel 10 with a warning telling people to stay in their bomb shelters, mixed with graphic images from Gaza. Then again in 2016, people watching Big Brother on Israel's Channel 2 suddenly had their feed cut and replaced with another propaganda clip. That one lasted about 3.5 minutes, just long enough to get noticed before it was pulled. None of these takeovers were super polished, but they were meant to shake people up, not just jam the airwaves, but get into viewers' heads. When we're talking about broadcast interruptions that terrified the public, well, these are pretty much the textbook definition. In 1959, a few thousand people in Michigan were trying to watch the World Series when their screen just went black for the entire first 3 games. Turned out it wasn't a tech failure. A former station employee named Harold Lindgren had snuck into a relay station miles out of town and jammed the signal by shoving steel wool into a pipe in the transmitter. He'd been fired a few weeks earlier and wanted to get back at the boss who let him go. He called the whole thing a diabolical plot. And to be fair, it kinda was. He drove out at night, climbed a fence, sabotaged the equipment with stuff he'd just grabbed from his kitchen sink. Technicians from Chicago and Green Bay had been brought in to figure out what happened. When police finally tracked him down, Lindgren admitted to everything. He didn't really seem to care about hiding it, just wanted to make a point. In 1980, WSB-TV in Atlanta had a bizarre incident during a kids' cartoon block. Oh boy. The Plastic Man Comedy Adventure Show was on. Yeah, that show that we all remember. Well, right in the middle of a commercial break, the screen suddenly cut to a still photo of a woman for a couple seconds, nude. The image had been spliced into a Georgia Forestry Commission ad. It seemed like an accident, but apparently it wasn't. The station's general manager, Fred Barber, later admitted that 2 master control operators had done this on purpose. They were the guys who handled overnight sign-offs and morning startup duties. Apparently, one of them liked splicing random things onto tapes, and this time, no one on the station's morning staff caught it before it aired. The operators were fired immediately. Even though it was over in seconds, it caused a huge stir. Because, well, first of all, the time slot, worst time and place to show a naked woman on TV, and this was a major station. So the rules around tape handling and sign-on and sign-off procedures were tightened. On January 4th, 2000, the Teletubbies was playing on the GMA network in the Philippines. On this particular morning, for just a few seconds, the screen cut to a photo of actress Rosanna Rosas with her chest exposed. Teletubbies was weird enough as is. This was the last thing these young viewers needed to see. Obviously, this immediately triggered a warning from the country's media review board. GMA later explained that the whole thing was a mistake caused by an employee who was fixing a computer at the time. Apparently, he pressed the wrong button while trying to help with some system repairs, and somehow that caused the wrong image to flash on air. That sounds hard to believe. I mean, that really does sound like the excuse you give when you just don't know what to say. Oh, I pressed the wrong button, and then it was boobs. Anyway, they insisted nobody did this as a prank. The network apologized and promised to tighten up controls. The employee was never named, wasn't much follow-up on whether he kept his job, but it's definitely freaked out parents and probably gave a few kids a weird memory of Teletubbies. They probably grew up thinking this was some bizarre fever dream. On October 8th, 2022, in the middle of a live newscast on Iran's state-run TV, the broadcast suddenly cut to a masked figure and a black screen showing Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei surrounded by flames with a digital target on his head. It only lasted 12 seconds, but this was very loud and clear. The screen also showed photos of 4 women who had recently died during the Mahsa Amini protests, along with the phrase "Women, Life, Freedom," repeated over and over. Mahsa Amini was a 22-year-old woman who died after being arrested by Iran's morality police for supposedly not wearing her headscarf the right way. Her death quickly set off protests all across the country. The group behind this hack called themselves Adalat Ali, a hacktivist collective that had already leaked internal government documents in the past. State TV anchors were clearly rattled when the feed returned. I mean, just look at this news anchor's face. People inside and outside Iran shared clips of the hack almost immediately, and it spread fast online. No one really knows how deep the investigation went or if anyone got caught, but even though it was under 15 seconds, this was one of the most direct, high-profile hacks ever pulled off on live Iranian television. Now, for obvious reasons, I can't actually find footage of these Soviet pirate broadcasting hacks. I mean, it was the Soviet Union, everything was very locked down, but back in the Soviet Union, where the government completely controlled radio and TV, pirate broadcasting wasn't done as a prank. This was one of the only ways to hear anything outside what the government wanted you to hear. As early as 1966, there were reports of a teenager in Kaluga hijacking the radio to spread fake news about a nuclear war breaking out with the US. That kind of hoax was rare, but actual hijackers were popping up constantly, especially during the 70s and 80s. They'd jump onto relay stations during programming gaps and broadcast their own music, their own opinions. Sometimes the state would lash back in newspapers, calling them radio hooligans and accusing them of jamming frequencies needed by emergency aircraft. Whether that part was true or just scare tactics isn't totally clear. I imagine there was a lot of exaggeration going on. There are even hotlines for citizens to report pirate signals, but these underground broadcasters kept showing up, proving how desperate the people were for anything that wasn't just government propaganda. I've been your host, James. I'll catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next video.